Rainbow Six Siege, where every operator's journey begins with potential and ends in one inevitable outcome. A fucking nerf. Yeah, today we're diving into why the devs at Ubisoft are so terrified of any form of power creep, they've turned it into Nerf 6 Siege. Right, okay, let's just be real for a second here. Ubisoft has an addiction, and it's not releasing new content, it's not making really good games. It's actually making shit games recently. But no, their true power lies in nerfing operators. Instead of making the game more fun by buffing an underpowered operator, their first instinct is to kneecap anybody who dares to show a glimpse of strength. Right, let's take Ash for example. Once upon a time, she was a high speed, high damage operator, right? She could get into sight quick as chips, and she could take 1 billion people out at once, right? Oh, she got nerfed. Right, but let's remove a few bullets from a magazine. Okay, she kind of, I know she doesn't offer a lot in terms of utility, right? But she's kind of a high skill operator in the fact that she's kind of flashy, she takes only a few bullets to kill. And to really outmaneuver a team takes a bit of skill in my opinion. Don't get me started on Jaeger. That man went from being a must-pick to a shell of his former self after so many nerfs I've lost count. What's wild to me is that instead of buffing underutilised operators to bring them up to par with the better ones, well, at least statistically the better ones, they'd rather drag everyone down to mediocrity. So Ubisoft's balancing philosophy seems to be, if everyone's bad, then no one can be overpowered. And then there's the so-called balancing system, right, based on win deltas. And for those who don't know, Ubisoft determines operator power based on how often they win compared to how often they're picked. Sounds fair, right? Wrong. Here is why that's busted. It completely ignores context. Maybe an operator has a high win rate, but it is only picked by the top level players who know how to use them effectively. Does that mean they need a nerf? According to Ubisoft's win deltas, yes. So they nerfed the operator into oblivion even though most players couldn't actually get these same results if their life depended on it. They're balancing operators for the top 1% of players and everyone else is stuck suffering the consequences. Take a look at operators like, I don't know, who was nerfed recently? Dockerby. Is she used well in Pro League? Yeah, okay, time for a nerf. But what about the average player base? It doesn't matter. And what about the operators who are absolutely, basically, bottom tier trash, right? I hate to say it, but operators that I rarely see the light of day, someone like Warden these days. Ubisoft basically respond by saying, we'll get some eventually. Maybe after another elite skin drop. So instead of making the game more fun and more exciting and even more dynamic by raising up the weak operators that they spent months, possibly years, coming up with the ideas for, by the way, Ubisoft takes the fun approach of, quote-unquote, balancing by making everyone's favourite operators less enjoyable to play. Operators come out, they're strong. The community learns to play them, and then Ubisoft swings the nerf hammer. It's like clockwork. It all to avoid power creep. Look, I get it, right? No one wants an operator that dominates every match, right? If it's the same operator, same meta, it's kind of annoying, but you can't keep nerfing everything to the point where the game feels like a struggle to even have fun. Like, if we compare it to Old Siege, right, which I hate to bang on about, right, but a lot of people have their heyday in the Siege, the Old Siege era. Old Siege felt more dynamic, right? It was chaotic and honestly more fun. Now, it feels like a careful balancing act where Ubisoft is more afraid of creating a powerful operator than they are of making the game actually fun to play. So, Ubisoft, here's a thought instead of nerfing everything into the ground. Maybe, just maybe, try buffing the underdogs for once to get them on the same level as the meta operators. Let's see what happens when you actually make the game feel, well, balanced, instead of just having a terrified modem of, being scared of power creep. Right, so first I want to focus more on this win delta thing. And buckle up because we're going to dive into the worst ways to balance a game for Ubisoft. And it's their obsession with win deltas. So, again, I'll touch on again. Here's how it works. The win delta measures how often an operator wins compared to how often they're picked. So, if the operator has a high win rate but a low pick rate, the operator is flagged as potentially overpowered. That seems really simple, doesn't it? But no, it's just wrong. It actually is incredibly misleading, and it doesn't take the real context of the gameplay, like I said before, into account, right? So let's say, for example, our favourite, old fan favourite anyway, Jaeger, which had let's say a 55% win rate, but is only picked, say, 40% of matches. Ubisoft sees this and thinks, Jaeger's too strong. Time for an nerf. But what they're not telling you is who's using Jaeger and in what situations, right? A high win rate doesn't mean an operator is too strong. It often just means that highly skilled players are the ones picking them. They know how to maximize that operator's potential. The thing is, a lot of these win delta numbers are skewed by, as I said, the top 1% of players or pro gameplay. In pro leagues, every operator is used to their maximum efficiency. It's pushed to the limit. So they're playing with near perfect coordination, map knowledge and communication. Operators like Jaeger or Ash are naturally going to perform better in that environment. But what about the other 99% of the player base? In casual or even ranked play at lower levels, these operators are not even in the slight camp of being overpowered. Sure, some players can use them well and they frag well, but they're not groundbreaking for the game, for the average Joe. But Ubisoft specifically looks at the win delta across the ranks and sees that this high win rate is a justification for nerfing them to the ground. But the truth is, win deltas are, well, they kind of ignore the huge differences in how operators are contextually played at various skill levels. At the highest ranks where team coordination is tight, an operator like Thatcher or Hibana might seem critical and strong, but for a solo queue gold player, their impact can be completely different. So, the result, Ubisoft balances for the top 1% and leave the rest of us to deal with the operators who no longer feel powerful at all, or even fun. This method of balancing also doesn't account for why certain operators have win rates, or have high win rates, sorry. An operator might be strong in very specific situations, like holding down a certain part of the map, or using a specific gadget, but instead of looking at those factors like map design, gadget synergy, or even game modes, Ubisoft just looks at that win rate and sees that it's higher than average and swings the nerf hammer. And don't even get me on operators that start with low pick rates but high win rates. Sometimes an operator is barely picked, but when they are, they perform well in the right hands. Take Glaz, or even, don't maybe say but Blackbeard. These operators had really low pick rates, but when they were picked, they saw success. That doesn't mean that they were overpowered, it just means that the players who picked them knew how to use them in niche situations. But instead of appreciating that operators can have niche roles, Ubisoft sees a high win delta and panics, thinking they've accidentally created a god tier operator and everyone must be following these pro league, class A fighters out there, and so they nerf them. Then what happens? These niche operators become unplayable, or at least to the point where they're not fun, and then the pick rates drop even further. So Ubisoft's response is, well, I guess they're balanced now. Meanwhile, other games with competitive scenes like Overwatch, or even League of Legends, oh, I can't even say that, don't even remotely rely on this kind of decision making for balance, and they don't even specifically rely on win deltas for balancing. They factor in playstyle, synergy, skill curves, and how often certain abilities are used. But with Siege, it's like the devs only care about those two numbers, pick rate and win rate. It's kind of a lazy way to balance, and it shows, and it's the lack of nuance. And the worst part, this broken system means that we, the players, have to suffer through nerfs on our favourite operators just because the pro players know how to use them well. Instead of seeing them buff weaker operators to bring them up to speed, we're stuck watching our mains get weaker and weaker over time, all thanks to this flawed win delta. It's honestly baffling that Ubisoft still uses this as their main tool for balancing decisions. In a way it's not, because they're kind of antiquated anyway in a lot of what they do, but the system just doesn't account for the complexity of Siege's gameplay. The variety in skill levels, playstyles and strategies across the player base means, well, win deltas don't tell the full story. So, Ubisoft, here's an idea, right? Let's provide some valid criticism, right? Let's analyze that a little bit and provide a decent, productive response. Stop relying on win deltas like there's some sort of sacred number. Start balancing based on actual feedback from the community and a deeper understanding of how the game is played across all ranks, not just the 1%. The win delta system is flawed, and it's making Siege less fun for everybody. A good example of a company that does do this right is Jagex for RuneScape. They have polls each month asking the community, what would you like to see in the game? I'm going to implement this, vote, and I think if it gets above 75% or even 70% of the threshold, that is implemented into the game. That is a brilliant way of doing things. That makes the community inherently involved. The game only progresses towards a community-driven orientation. But as I said, with Siege, it just seems like, even if they've said they're not, at least it seems like they're only focused on the Pro League aspect of the game, which it's been said a billion times before. But anyway, that's just my take. I think the win delta needs to go. I'm sick of it. Until then, I guess we'll just have to deal with operators being nerfed left, right, and centre, all because of a busted win delta system. And I'm sure Scopos will go that way because she's kind of strong. She's kind of, fun to play. Maybe she's picked a bit more than usual, but, I'm sure she's got a nerf coming, right? But hey, at least we've got more skins coming, right? We'll have a few mediocre skins on the Battle Pass. Good heavens, fellas. Get me another drink.